What if I told you I could ask you just one polarized question and know your character? You'd all say it's impossible, right? In our current political climate, many people do the exact same thing, asking, are you a Democrat or a Republican? In a 2016 study conducted by Abigail Geiger in coordination with Pew Research Center, Democrats and Republicans ranked each other relative to other large groups, such as religious groups and politicians. Democrats ranked Republicans below evangelical Christians, and Republicans ranked Democrats below atheists on average without ever meeting each other. Most surprisingly, both Democrats and Republicans ranked the other group below elected government officials, a group that's commonly hated by both groups. This goes to show the magnitude of partisanship in current-day America and the devastating effect it's had on the way we view and interact with the people in our communities. When I was a kid, my parents raised me to treat everyone with respect, regardless of their background. Now, this isn't to say that I never made a judgment based on my first interaction with a person, but it did make me an extremely social kid. I was eager to learn everything and anything about everybody. At a very young age, I learned that respect was an extremely useful tool to make friends. Later in life, in elementary school, I'd be around the house when I'd hear my brother talking at a mile a minute in his room. I was so confused. What could he possibly be talking about? And this fast for? I had to find out. So I investigated. It turns out my brother was practicing for speech and debate. He shared his opinions on his case with me and showed it to me and encouraged me to share my opinions on it too. This conversation about his speech and debate topics flourished into a continued discussion on world events and the news. I was excited to finally bond with my brother over something, and my brother was excited to finally be able to share his passions with his little brother. Having a politically involved brother rubbed off on me. I became extremely interested in world news and made sure that I stayed on top of it so I could continue having these conversations with my brother. Not only because it was just fun, but because I gained a lot from those conversations. With every talk we would have, I felt like I came out with a new perspective, more information that better solidified my worldview. When my brother moved on to college and my family moved from New Mexico to Colorado, and as I was going from elementary school to middle school, I yearned to have this conversation with my own peers. When I arrived at Colorado, luckily, I made friends quickly, being an extremely social and extroverted kid. But political conversation felt different here. When controversial topics came up, tensions rose, names were called, and the conversation would quickly take a turn. Now, this was probably most likely because we were just kids, but still, it says something. My closest friends held the same beliefs as me, and and my other friends weren't willing to hold conversation with someone with opposing opinions as them. So, as I went into 8th grade and COVID began, I turned to the internet and social media for my political commentary and conversation. Especially, I turned to YouTube. I was excited to hear from individual creators as I could hear a diverse array of opinions and gain the perspective that I lacked during my conversations in middle school. They would even be able to give me stories and news that major news media outlets wouldn't be able to, because I knew that these outlets were biased. I spent years on social media and relied on it for my political conversation and commentary. I quickly learned about the alt-right pipeline, the system in which social media algorithms feed the user content that is strictly in the conservative bubble in order to keep the user in the conservative bubble and even push them towards radicalization. I thought to myself, how stupid does someone have to be to fall for something like that? I mean, it's just so blatantly obvious, right? Just watching the same content over and over and over again. But one day, I was showing my friend a YouTube video, and he pointed out that my feed was filled with nothing but far-left content creators. I knew that I was left-leaning, but I hadn't taken that step back to realize that all of the content that I was consuming was produced by far-left content creators. I realized that I had to make a change. I realized that I too was in a bubble. Not only one in which where I was only consuming leftist content, but one in which I was viewing all of history and politics through blue-tinted glasses. When I took that step back and opened my opinions and beliefs to conservative creators and surrounded myself intentionally with people with differing opinions than me as I entered high school, I felt that I had a better understanding of our history and political climate as I found that I had a better understanding of our political climate as I dropped my political biases. This whole experience left me wondering, why? Why are major news networks so biased? Why does the alt-right pipeline even exist? Why do social media companies fall to the very same faults that they aim to subvert? Why is America so polarized? When I looked into it, I realized that it all really boiled down to one thing: maximizing profits. As most of the American population knows, American news companies are extremely biased, with CNN being the face of leftist media and Fox News being the face of right-wing media. Of course, biased news creates biased people. But why does the news have to be biased in the first place? Wouldn't less biased, more factual news drive viewership more? Wouldn't people be more keen towards news that was actually giving them the facts? Not at all. When news companies pandered towards specific political parties, they were able to incite more emotional responses from viewers. They got more engagement and more loyal engagement with these enthusiastic responses. Let's think about it. If you're viewing something that you agree with, you're more likely to keep watching it. You're more likely to agree with it and be happy with what you're watching. Whereas if you don't like the content, you're just going to skip right over it. This created a space where it was beneficial for media to be biased. Along with this, as the 24-hour news cycle developed, news companies had to start picking up smaller pieces of media in order to keep their 24-hour news cycle going. What this looked like was news companies picking up small political disputes between individuals in a community and amplifying them for the world to see, driving hatred on both sides. And hatred drives engagement. People kept watching. More people kept watching. Political scientist Mark Jerkowitz conducted a study that found that 50% of Democrats trust CNN and more than 50% of Republicans trust Fox News. But most concerningly is of the 30 media companies that were studied, not one of them had over 50% support from the American population. American news companies cracked the code. By getting viewers passionate in their own political beliefs and hateful towards the other, they were able to drive viewership in a loyal and enthusiastic manner, driving profits massively. But social media has to be different, right? With an endless sea of content creators to choose from and a nearly infinite amount of perspectives, social media seems like a place that fights bias. Well, not actually. In reality, the algorithms which push what shows up in our feeds are driven by highly biased algorithms that are actually intentionally driving partisanship. Now, I know it might seem crazy to say that these large corporations are purposefully driving a cultural divide and political divide in our society, but just stick with me here. The way these algorithms work is that they prioritize keeping the user hooked on the app, by keeping them engaged with it and having them stay on the app. What this looks like is liking, commenting, following, viewing the person's profile, Even reporting the profile is considered a positive interaction. So, what does this look like in a political context? The user is fed content that aligns with their own beliefs, since the media company knows, or the algorithm more accurately, knows that the user will like it and engage with it in a positive manner as they align with what they're seeing. And they only display the opposing side when it's very brutal and incendiary, because it will drive rage and in turn hate comments. Any comments are engagement. Whatever the user does that's engaging is good for the company. This isn't just a sentiment that people feel. This has been confirmed by these large corporations. An internal memo sent within Facebook read that, and I quote, "The more incendiary the material, the more engagement, the more it's boosted by the algorithm. The news companies know, the media companies know what they're doing, and they keep doing it." By feeding the user extreme political content, the user becomes more set in their own beliefs and demonizes the other, driving partisanship to the moon. Now, I know it's extremely easy to feel small in the face of an issue this big. It is a systemic issue that's been created by the years of capitalistic greed in America. It's something that we can't change. But what we can change is our own role in society. We don't need to be afraid. In a New York Times study, researchers found that 9/10 of Americans felt that a lack of open, judgment-free conversation was an important issue in America. In the same study, researchers found that 3/4 of Americans have held their tongue in fear of harsh criticism about their opinions, yet less than 1/4 of Americans have actually responded to these opinions with harsh criticisms. It's clear that Americans yearn for a space where they can speak freely. Even if it may feel uncomfortable, the only thing we can do is to step out of our shells, talk to our neighbors, engage in these conversations. Since I adopted these beliefs, I can't count on my fingers anymore how many times I've sparked up a random conversation with a stranger and it's flourished into a productive conversation that provides benefit to both parties. If we speak up, people will come out of their shells because they feel just like you do. The only way we can work forward is to talk to each other, see past the differences that set up virtual barriers between us, and realize that we can all come under one shared goal: making our communities better. Thank you.